The question of why Moses' body was never found is one that has fascinated theologians, scholars, and believers for centuries. It is a mystery that stretches beyond time, deeply embedded in the sacred narrative of the Bible. Despite the wealth of information we have about Moses, the fate of his body remains one of the most perplexing questions in biblical history. In this detailed exploration, we'll delve into the life, legacy, and ultimate fate of Moses while examining the broader theological implications of this unanswered question. Moses is a towering figure not only in the Bible, but in the collective history of humanity. His life story, recorded in the first 5 books of the Bible, known as the Pentateuch, reveals a man chosen by God for one of the most significant missions in the history of the Hebrew people. Born during a period of oppression for the Israelites in Egypt, Moses was saved from certain death when his mother hid him in a basket on the Nile. Pharaoh's daughter discovered him and raised him as her own, giving him the education and status of an Egyptian prince. Despite growing up in the lap of luxury, Moses never forgot his true identity. His compassion for his fellow Israelites drove him to intervene when he witnessed an Egyptian brutally beating a Hebrew slave. In a fit of rage, Moses killed the Egyptian, and when news of the incident spread, he fled to the wilderness to escape punishment. In the land of Midian, Moses' life took another dramatic turn when God appeared to him in the form of a burning bush. This moment marked the beginning of his prophetic mission to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt and lead them to the Promised Land. Moses returned to Egypt, confronted Pharaoh, and, with the aid of divine miracles, led the Israelites out of bondage. The story of the Exodus, which includes the parting of the Red Sea and the 10 Commandments, remains one of the most powerful narratives in both religious and historical contexts. Moses' journey was filled with miraculous events that demonstrated God's power and support for his chosen people. These miracles include the transformation of his staff into a serpent, the 10 plagues that struck Egypt, and the parting of the Red Sea. Each of these miraculous events not only demonstrated God's direct intervention, but also cemented Moses' role as a pivotal figure in God's plan. As Moses led the Israelites through the desert, they encountered numerous challenges, including hunger, thirst, and internal rebellion. Time and time again, Moses turned to God, and divine intervention followed, often in the form of miracles that sustained the people. Perhaps the most significant moment in Moses' journey came when he ascended Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. These tablets, inscribed by God's own hand, became the cornerstone of the moral and legal framework for the Israelites, shaping the faith of billions in the centuries to come. However, despite these miraculous acts and his close relationship with God, Moses' story also includes moments of failure and personal struggle. One of the most poignant events in Moses' life was his disobedience at the waters of Meribah, which ultimately cost him the right to enter the Promised Land. In the book of Numbers, 21-13, the Israelites found themselves without water and complained bitterly to Moses. God instructed Moses to speak to a rock and water would flow from it. However, in his frustration with the people, Moses struck the rock twice with his staff instead of speaking to it as God commanded. This act of disobedience, seemingly minor, had profound implications. God declared that because Moses had failed to trust him and sanctify his name before the people, Moses would not lead the Israelites into the Promised Land. It was a sobering reminder of the importance of absolute obedience to God, particularly for those in leadership positions. Moses' failure at Meribah is often viewed through the lens of human fallibility. Despite his extraordinary closeness to God and his role as a prophet and leader, Moses was still human and subject to the same weaknesses and emotions as any other person. As the Israelites neared the Promised Land, Moses was granted a final audience with God. In Deuteronomy 34, we read how God led Moses to the top of Mount Nebo, where he showed him the entirety of the land he had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. However, despite seeing the Promised Land, Moses was told he would not enter it. At the age of 120, Moses died in the land of Moab, but what followed is one of the most enduring mysteries in the Bible. The scriptures tell us that Moses was buried by God himself, and to this day, no one knows the location of his tomb, Deuteronomy 34, 5-6. This divine act of concealing Moses' burial site has intrigued scholars and believers alike. Why did God hide Moses' body? There are several interpretations, and while none can be confirmed definitively, each offers a unique insight into God's reasoning and the spiritual significance of Moses' death. One of the most commonly accepted explanations for the concealment of Moses' body is that God wanted to prevent the Israelites from turning Moses' burial site into a place of worship. Given Moses' immense influence and the deep reverence the people had for him, there was a real risk that his tomb could become a shrine, leading to idolatrous practices. By hiding his body, God ensured that the focus remained on his divine power rather than on Moses as a human figure. Moses' life was a testament to faith, perseverance, and obedience to God. By concealing his burial place, God reinforced the idea that Moses' legacy was not tied to a physical location or monument. Instead, his story lives on through the faith and practices of the people he led. The mystery surrounding his death and burial serves as a reminder that faith transcends the physical world. Some biblical scholars suggest that the mysterious circumstances surrounding Moses' death could hint at his unique role in the afterlife. In the New Testament, Moses appears alongside Elijah during the transfiguration of Jesus, Matthew 17:1-3. This has led some to believe that Moses' body was taken up to heaven, much like Elijah, who was carried away in a whirlwind. While this theory remains speculative, it offers a fascinating possibility that Moses' physical body was preserved for a special purpose beyond earthly existence. Moses' life was marked by moments of profound humility. Despite his role as the leader of the Israelites, he often deferred to God's will and acknowledged his own limitations. The mysterious nature of his death and burial can be seen as a final act of humility. By not having a known tomb or shrine, Moses' memory remains focused on his spiritual journey rather than any earthly honors. Moses' life and leadership had an immeasurable impact on the history of Israel and the world. He is remembered as the lawgiver, the prophet who led his people out of slavery and guided them toward the Promised Land. His faith, resilience, and unwavering commitment to God have inspired countless generations. Yet, Moses' story also reminds us of the complexity of human nature. His disobedience at Meribah, his moments of frustration, and his ultimate inability to enter the Promised Land show that even the greatest leaders are fallible. These elements of his story make Moses a deeply relatable figure, someone who struggled with the same doubts, fears, and failures as any other person. In the end, the mystery of Moses' body remains unsolved. But perhaps that is precisely the point. Moses' legacy does not lie in a tomb or a monument, but in the enduring faith and teachings he passed down to his people. His life and death point us toward the divine mysteries that transcend human understanding, inviting us to trust in God's wisdom and plan, even when the answers remain hidden. The question of why Moses' body was never found may never be answered definitively. But in many ways, the mystery itself is part of the message. Just as Moses led the Israelites through the wilderness with faith in God's unseen guidance, so too are we invited to trust in the divine mysteries that govern our lives. Moses' story, from his miraculous birth to his mysterious death, continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. His life is a testament to the power of faith, the complexity of human nature, and the boundless grace of God. And though his body may remain hidden, his legacy shines brightly in the hearts of believers across the world.